Hello, so my name's Alyssa. I'm going to be talking about the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the British 1975 movie, and more specifically the character of Frankenfurter and whether we as queer people portray it as good or bad representation, more specifically within the trans community. And yeah, so this is a British 1975 movie that was originally a musical, and yeah, they made like a film adaptation of it, and it did not do really good in the box office at all when it first came out. So yeah, the initial response was not good. And it was initially premiered in the Westwood Theatre, but it was shelved for a little bit until like a young like advertising executive persuaded the Waverly Theatre, which they would play a lot of midnight screenings of horror movies like The Night of the Living Dead. So they started playing it, and the manager like really believed in it as kind of like a I don't know, a vibe, and so started like kind of hyping the audiences up, and they would come in, they would dress up as the characters, they would shout like chants to the theaters, sing along to the songs, and it became a really big thing. Like it caught on to multiple other theaters within California, and then it caught on like basically around the world, around North America specifically, and it's now one of the longest running theater shows in history. People, especially during Halloween time, they dress up as the characters, they go, actors reenact the movie, and this is kind of like where I first discovered this movie. So the plot of this movie is kind of crazy. It was made by the guy who played the character of Riff Raff, and he kind of was inspired by B-grade horror movies and decided to make it kind of like a rock and roll musical. So it basically starts out with Brad and Janet, who are these very innocent, like very like nuclear couple. Their car breaks down. They go into this castle to find help because they see there's a light on. And when they knock on the door, Riff Raff, this like kind of crazy looking guy, answers, and they see like a bunch of like very oddly dressed people. And then they kind of get introduced to Frankenfurter, who is like the leader of the castle, this like very like feminine, flamboyant looking person. And so they're like, oh my god, who is this? And then Frankenfurter takes them to this room, shows them that he has created a human. So he's created this like cis looking, like perfect specimen called Rocky. Also this guy named Eddie comes out who Frankenfurter has kind of been like harvesting from a little bit. He didn't create Eddie, but so Eddie comes out, and then they go to bed, and then Frankenfurter seduces both of them, pretending to be their individual partners. And after this, Janet finds out that Frankenfurter has slept with her husband, and so she gets mad and she sleeps with Rocky. A lot of just like sexuality, just like swept away in desire and just craziness. And so anyways, everyone has dinner, and then they discover that they're actually eating Eddie, which was the guy that they had met earlier. And those are kind of the main plot points. That's all you kind of need to know in terms of like Frankenfurter's actions and his main actions in the movie. But yeah, this is a crazy ass movie. When I first watched it, I had no clue what was going on. My brother had to explain everything for me. And yeah, it is truly wild. To give more of a feel of like what the vibe at the time was in relation to like gay people and trans people. So in 1975, this was a post-Stonewall era where the like LGBT activism was increasing and increasing and increasing, and it was getting more polarizing. Groups were being formed like to just kind of hone in on like certain political like activism. And a lot of gay people were kind of excluding trans people from their activism because a lot of gay people felt, or like gay like pride groups or whatever, they felt that trans people were losing them respect from the rest of society. And so trans people were kind of this outlier and kind of an ostracized group, even within the like 2S LGBTQIA plus community. And so yeah, this was a very, very touchy time. The movie was very polarizing when it came out. And Yeah. So knowing that was like the political climate at the time, it can kind of give us a sense of what people might have felt of the movie, of hearing the words transsexual, transvestite, at the time, as those were things that were very narrowly discussed and narrowly touched on in, I guess, mainstream, but in media in general. But just to get into like the character, let's hone in on the character of Frankenfurter. This is a painting I did for my brother that I'm very proud of. It's like the one time I actually get to show it off. Anyways, so the character of Frankenfurter is a transvestite from transsexual Transylvania.
I'm just a sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania.
Transvestite and transsexual do mean different things. This term sheet from San Jose University explains it well. A transvestite is somebody who just dresses as the opposite gender for, I guess, a little bit of time, a lot of the time, but they're not somebody who has made a social or physical transition to the other gender. So it's just somebody who dresses like the other gender. When you say a transvestite from transsexual Transylvania, Frankenfurter is a transvestite, which means a man that would dress as a woman from transsexual Transylvania. Transsexual Transylvania would be the place that Frankenfurter is from. Well, but yeah, a lot of people say that Frankenfurter is trans. A lot of people say that Frankenfurter is a male drag queen. Anyways, let's get into some like other character traits. Frankenfurter is an evil scientist. Frankenfurter is seductive, very sexual. Frankenfurter is cannibalistic. Now, this is up to debate. Frankenfurter definitely made Brad and Janet be cannibalistic because they ate Eddie, who is also a human. Yeah, so is it cannibalistic if you're an alien eating a human? I don't know. Confirmed bisexual, assumed pansexual. Frankenfurter is manipulative. Frankenfurter is powerful, dominant, flamboyant, showy. Yeah, those are the main character traits. A lot of people view the Frankenfurter as trans representation. With this, I'm going to be kind of talking about the queer and trans community as one thing, and also specifically touching on the trans community, because that is a lot of what the discourse is about. So I found this very insightful article by Cale M. Keegan from the Grand Valley State University. So the article is titled "In Praise of the Bad Transgender Object," explaining the climate around the character, specifically narrating like certain tropes that trans characters often get stuck and pigeonholed into. So they're either murderous villains or tragic victims. A good example of this is horror movies Psycho, where like that main character is dressed up as his mom, and that's like the whole, like, I guess, climax of the movie. So the overarching question that I want to touch on is the character of Frankenfurter good representation to the LGBT community, and more specifically the trans community? So that's a lot of what the discourse around this character is focused on, just because of the terms like transvestite and transsexual being thrown around a lot in the movie. And they give a really good framework for what makes good transgender representation. So just to quickly go through this framework and discuss it in Frankenfurter. And so good transgender media is media that casts transgender actors as transgender characters. No, they didn't do that. It is media that is written and directed by transgender creators. No, they did not do that. It is the media that allows transgender characters to be more than just narrative or political tokens. I'm going to say no for that one. Good transgender media is authentic, progressive, and diverse. Authentic, yes. Progressive, to be debated. And diverse, most of the speaking characters are white. So I'm gonna say no for that one, even though there is queerness in it. We're gonna say no. Looking at Rocky Horror Picture Show in this lens, it is not good representation. But then again, there is debates to be had on the specific trans identity of the character. In looking at a lot of different opinions that I'll get into, there seems to be a widely known and acknowledged idea that while this character is problematic in some ways, you can't deny the power of there being a powerful character gender bending in the limelight, especially in this like musical format where a lot of people would dress up as this character. It allowed a lot of people to explore their fashion, their gender, and just like drag in general. This character has been like widely recognized as a drag character, and so having this opportunity and this like running event for people to be encouraged to dress up in drag, it is powerful, and it has made a positive difference in a lot of people's lives. So that is a running theme to people that even talk negatively about the character. So he's a very sexually manipulative character when he sleeps with both Brad and Janet, pretending to be each of their partner. It's kind of like a reinforcing of negative stereotypes that trans people or drag queens are kind of like predatory sexually towards that either men or women in that nuclear kind of couple. And yeah, like other than that, it's just he's a murderer. He is abusive. He's selfish. He's kind of evil. There's something to be said with a lot of iconic queer characters. A lot of them are evil because that is the only way that those certain, I guess, flamboyant or queer or independent character traits have been given to us by like mainstream media and stuff like that. So this definitely does fall into the category of many evil queer characters that are iconic and beloved, even though they are extremely evil. So hearing from an opinion of Frankenfurter is a horrible trans representation, horrible queer representation. This article by Maddie Myers of themarysue.com. So she kind of talks about the choice to recast Laverne Cox, who is a very beloved, very popular trans woman, an actual trans woman, in a female version of Rocky Horror Picture Show. She said it was a terrible decision. And this is a quote: "Dr. Frankenfurter is not an example of positive queer representation. He is a ton of shitty, old-fashioned queer exploitation stereotypes mashed into a single character. He's a vampy, cruel, selfish, abusive, violent murderer and rapist. Y'all, he rapes people and keeps sex slaves. Not a role model." So this is true. Like, none of this can be disputed because, yes, like, this is exactly what the character does and is. Maddie demands that this movie needs to be put to rest. It's okay to like the movie, but let's not keep it going. Let's not prolong it. And that she herself and over a dozen people have felt repulsed, hurt, scared, and traumatized from seeing this movie and seeing the activity around it. So yeah, this is something I myself am not a trans person, so I can't speak to this and I can't dispute it because this is people's real feelings around the movie, and they have certain experiences that have been negatively impacted by the stereotypes that this movie reinforces. Like, a lot of people do feel extremely offended by this character. And I mean, Maddie does recognize that like a lot of her queer friends as well have felt empowered by this character, and it's been a key part of a lot of their, I guess, coming out stories because they felt like they were given that power just from like watching the character, and they were given that confidence. Hearing from Maddie really presents the Frankenfurter's bad representation point very well. But there's a lot of websites that have like think pieces kind of in celebration of the character. Tara Nash from medium.com says that the character Frankenfurter is kind of a fun satirical resistance to society's oppression of drag and the LGBTQ community, and the bold, like, flamboyant choreography and sexually suggestive costumes are some of the first to introduce drag to Hollywood. So Tara's interpretation of the character is a bisexual man who loves drag, which is different from other people's that hold the character as, I guess, explicitly trans. So while not explicitly claiming that this character is good representation for trans people, she does say that the queer gestures positively amplify an underrepresented community, especially in the time that it was made. Tara talks a lot about queer gesture and the power of Frankenfurter's sexuality, which I think is a very huge part of the character. It's interesting how something so B-movie and camp and everything, it draws a lot of discourse and formal assessment, even though it was made as such an unserious thing. Like, the creator even said, like, I wasn't really thinking that much when I made it. I just wanted to make something fun. I just wanted to make something crazy. And I feel like in this book, it really talks a lot about how the power of queer gesture and, like, even the most simple things can have such intense meaning. So this book is Sexual Futures, Queer Gestures and Other Latino Longings by Juana Maria Rodriguez. And this part especially talks about just the power of simplistic gestures and how that is inherently political if done by like a queer body. So by insisting on gender and sex as acts of interpretation, queers make evident the possibility of disentangling bodies and acts from pre-assigned meanings, creating meaning and pleasure anew from the recycled scraps of dominant cultures. I feel like this is a really good point in just explaining how queer people take different acts and different things and just make it its own new form of political power. So with those online published essays talking about the character, we have one opinion that it is really bad representation. It's sexually exploitative, which upholds like negative stereotypes, just altogether negative stereotype of queer and trans people. And then another opinion where it's good representation, or it is positive that the movie existed because it represents a community. It shows queer gestures, which is powerful. So with things like this, I always love to explore on Reddit because I feel like it's just regular people giving quick opinions that they didn't think too long about, and it's just, it gives you like a long list of all different opinions. And there's some really good ones on here that I want to showcase that kind of really encapsulate so many different opinions and explain why this character is so polarizing. So in r/ask transgender, is Rocky Horror Picture Show problematic to the LGBTQ+ community? This film was actually a part of our lesson plan for college, for a college level English course, where we dissected it to show all the ways this film reinforces problematic stereotypes. It is acknowledged that at the time any representation is okay, but in today's age we can reflect on the past and see the poor execution. This one's also interesting. On my list of day-to-day worries, Rocky Horror ranks somewhere around what temperature it is in France or the price of yachts. It doesn't rank. Yeah, if I wanted to quibble about it a little, I could see an argument that it maybe reinforces some problematic stereotypes or uses some outdated language, but it's also so weird and off-kilter and not renowned for those things that it barely matters. Basically, got bigger problems than the time warp. This one, I'm glad, agrees with my take that he is transvestite, not transgender. He is pansexual, not gay. As for getting nothing out of it, that's sad. It has loads, and many should be re-examined today. Some key examples. Sexual freedom is liberating. While you are focusing on the obvious bad guy, there are quiet plans of manipulation and double-crossing. Don't be blind to it. Just because someone/a group doesn't make you feel included, don't ignore it if they're doing terrible things. There's no such thing as one perfect human. Careful what you liberate, it can't be undone. The reality of this world is when you're free and creating, liberating, there are consequences that you may not yet comprehend to consider, and they can be severable to the liberated. They tell the audience that they are hiding in sweet surrender, not facing reality. So instead of running blindly towards what we want, think first. Put in due consideration of consequences, including consequences to other people, even if they are from a completely different planet. I quite honestly think people are thinking way too much about it. It's just a transvestite alien with some incest siblings that betray him later on. I personally love this movie and don't think it was really meant to target any kind of community. I have tons of trans female friends, including me, who loved it. It's one of those just enjoy it. It's very problematic. Very. That's why you can't take it seriously. I think trying to find any logic in Rocky Horror is pointless. Yes, Frankenfurter is the villain and a very problematic stereotype, but he's also a very fun character that many people love and reclaim as a symbol for sexual liberation and freedom of gender expression, although the original source material depicts these things negatively. I remember watching it in the 80s and being devastated by the cis-focused conflation of sex and gender bending. Trans people like me are still portrayed as liars, sexual deviants, and aliens today. Historically, cisgender people, especially queer cis folks, have appropriated trans culture and made it about sexuality. Question for the predominant cis-privileged folks who love this movie. Blaxploitation movies were also big in the 70s. Is it cool to dress up in blackface and watch reenact these movies every year? Check your gender privilege, please. It's fine for cis and roughly cis people to play around with their gender presentation. It's only problematic when that's seen as representing trans people. I feel like reading the Reddit threads really give me a way better idea of what the general public and the queer community thinks of this movie, just because it's so many different opinions and experiences. Yeah, since it is excused for being like the problematic by being the first representation people had, like there is no room for that anymore. We've had good representation. It is kind of few and far between in like very mainstream media, but we're at a point where we still do really need to counteract negative stereotypes, because it is a really rife time for trans people and queer people in I'm mostly talking about North America in this video, but we really have no room or margin for error that's this like crazy or this like unthoughtful in like the making of the media. And it's like this movie really feels like it stepped into the position of queer representation, and it was not meant to be. Like I don't feel like that's what the goal was in making the movie, and so it's kind of like it's so impossible to disagree with all of the opinions that it is bad representation. Like I agree, it is bad representation. Not like I'm the person that has the final say on that. I don't even really have a say because I'm not trans. I mean, I am queer, but yeah, it's such an interesting and nuanced topic, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. I certainly had a good time researching it and making it, so hopefully it just made you think about the character a little bit more, think about what makes good or bad representation, and the nuances of loving media that is bad representation, and kind of what that means and why we love it so much. But yeah, thank you for watching.